Aston Villa win at home, second consecutive clean sheet. Doom Norwich City and Dean Smith ruthlessly, mercilessly to the championship, and yet I'm still dissatisfied. That is how you know I am a true Aston Villa fan. I am always dissatisfied. One thing that is always satisfying, however, is the old-fashioned cocktail, and my friend, it is that time of year. For this one, I'm using Basil Hayden as the foundational bourbon. All you need is simple syrup, which you can make yourself or buy. You need an orange wedge, and you need some bitters, and you must have one big ice cube. So that's what I'm going to pour now as we review Aston Villa 2, Norwich City 0. Greetings from a sunny parlour. And how cool would it be to be a Villa fan, Stuart, and have a son, Charlie, who's in the Villa Academy and on his 14th birthday be featured on the big screen at Villa Park. Happy birthday, Charlie Palmer and Stuart. And thanks so much for watching. Charlie, try to stay off of these as much as you possibly can for as long as you can. You know, the Villa game against Norwich away was so similar to this one. Possession was almost even, as I'll show you in the stats shortly. In that game, it was Jacob Ramsey, late-ish first half goal, solo, power, and then they wrapped it up late through Ollie Watkins. In this game, it was Ollie Watkins, late-ish first half, solo, power, and then Danny Ings wrapped it up late. Quick quirky fact, but Steven Gerrard in his entire career has never lost when he's come up against Norwich City. And when John Brooks officiates an Aston Villa game, Villa have a 100% winning record. I named this show the Holy Trinity Show because I like to deal with the three big issues or moments that defined Villa 2, Norwich 0, starting with the key statistics. And I mentioned earlier how eerily similar the statistics were in this game and the Carrow Road game as Villa do the double over Norwich with 2-0 wins. That game earlier this season finished with a 50-50 possession, which is pretty rare. Wasn't far off from that. And I think the one concern that we can take away is that it really should have been a much heavier defeat given the attack and shooting stats. Villa also created two big chances, which they missed. A key issue for me, and this is a recurring theme throughout the season, but was the lack of cohesion going forward in this game and play in the front third generally. I have bemoaned this over and over. Some of that came down to Leon Bailey, and I will forgive him for the lack of meaningful minutes this season, but it just seems like too often when Villa go forward, it's impossible to see any patterns developing. And that means there's a lot of onus on players to individually have creative moments of brilliance. Now, we have players that can do that, create moments of individual brilliance that leads to goals. The danger is, and we saw this with Jack Grealish, if the opposition seals that player off, then what? I just would have thought we would have seen at this stage of the season more patterned-like combination play, because when it does happen, it seems like it's by accident more than by design. And I realize it takes a settled squad and good coaching and time to build that fluidity, because so many times on Saturday, it was as if Aston Villa was reacting to the circumstances on the field rather than instinctively knowing where to go. Another important issue, which brings this game into context, is just how bad Norwich City is. I mean, to think we were heavily linked with Milo Rashica and Max Aarons at one point is like, wow. And I wonder, is there one single player in that Norwich side, Teemu Pukki maybe, that could be in Villa's matchday squad? I don't think so. And even more sobering for Aston Villa right now, which current members of their squad could legitimately crack any of the top 6 squads right now? Be realistic. Emi Martinez, yes. Jacob Ramsey, maybe because of his age and potential. Phil Coutinho, Luca Dean. This is the reality of what we're facing. And if we're legitimately aiming for those top 6 places, well then, as I said last week, that puts an awful lot of pressure on our recruitment department. First, to clear bodies out and actually generate some transfer revenue, but then to find the right people. And finding the right people is going to be expensive. And my final key issue is the exclusion again from the starting 11 of Emi Buendia and against his former side. I'm starting to wonder if the club is just grooming him for the number 10 role next year, letting him watch Phil Coutinho do his thing starting games or in training, and then next year it's Emi Buendia's shirt and role to take, because maybe they can't justify Coutinho's wage packet and the transfer fee on top of it, because obviously they're not going to play those two players together. And anytime Emi Buendia comes on, it's like a jolt of energy right away. 3 out of 3 on attempted dribbles right from the off. Or maybe this is the game plan. Go 70 minutes and then later, when everybody's tired, infuse the team with a fresh set of Emi Buendia legs to give them that little infusion of energy. Only Steven Gerrard and the coaching staff will know for sure. Big issue or moment number 3, wicked Watkins. Irony is not the right word that he turned in the kind of performance today that doomed his former boss, Dad, and his team to relegation. Maybe it's sardonic that he had that kind of a game. The goal was huge, and imagine if that goal didn't come when it did. Villa Park would have been a very, very tense place. So it wasn't just that, though. His role in the 2-0 goal was immense. He worked hard, retrieved the ball initially, and that led to the sequence to the 2-0 goal, which killed the game off, of course. But he was also making clearances in his own penalty area from set pieces, the chasing as usual, 6 total shots, 0.71 XG, all by himself. When Ollie Watkins is at his very best, he really is like RoboCop, relentless, that unusual upright running gait that's powerful without being blindingly quick, and he's relentless. Now, I realize it's Norwich City, but this Ollie Watkins today tells me that he is the Premier League striker for Aston Villa, and I really want him to succeed. I know it would have been difficult for him when Dean Smith left the building, but he's also a perfectionist, and Steven Gerrard has challenged him, and we're now finding out whether he's up for that challenge. I think he is. I thought him having a child this year would elevate him and inspire him to more from last year. Maybe all those sleepless nights had the opposite effect, but I really don't want the club to give up on this guy. Number 2, squad switches. I actually had to do a double take at 6:30 a.m. my time this morning when I saw the team news, and I'm super delighted for Luca Dean that he was in the squad, because it didn't look good a couple of weeks ago with that shoulder injury. By the way, this guy is class. The touch, the timing of his runs, the vision, the delivery. When this guy is surrounded by like-minded players of a similar IQ and maybe a little bit more defensive resoluteness in the squad, I think he's going to go on and express himself and actually give more. 4 key passes, 88% pass percentage, so long as he could stay healthy. The Callum Chambers one was interesting to me because I thought that was going to happen last week. And if you're Ezri Konsa and you keep a clean sheet on the road at Leicester, you're probably asking, well, what did I do wrong? Apart from the one where he kind of switched off and that led to a counter and a pretty good chance for Leicester City. For me, Callum Chambers just seems to have a little bit more pop to his passing, and he's a more assertive presence on the field right now than Ezri Konsa. And this is going to be an interesting side story to watch, whether he now keeps his place at Turf Moor this weekend. Last week, I said on this program, we all need to calm down on Big Tim. And boom, a week later, he starts. And as it turns out, he was playing against a championship side, and he did not look out of place. His stats were very, very good. And by the way, it must be said, Tyrone Mings was solid in this game. But as for Big Tim, a 73-minute performance to add to his performance at Leicester, 5 recoveries in that time. He had an accurate passing rate of 13 out of 16, which is a decent 81%. 3 out of 3 winning all his tackles, and his ground duels were 3 out of 5. And I think what he does best, even as a young player, It just seems like he knows when to step, and that's a hard thing to teach a young player. That is very instinctual, and because he's so big and strong, he usually outmuscles his opponents and wins those duels. I am going to temper my excitement on this player because I simply refuse to believe that given all the big names Aston Villa has been associated with recently in the lead up to the summer transfer window in the similar position, that the best thing for Tim Iroegbunam next year is to be on the fringes of the first team when he should be playing week after week in the championship with and against seasoned men in the game. Norwich is not a top Premier League side, but might actually be a pretty good destination for him to hone his craft a little bit under Dean Smith. And sometimes the worst thing you can do is to throw a player in when he's not quite ready. Now, I may be wrong about this because look at Jacob Ramsey. He's made an impression as a 20-year-old, but some Villa fans saying, well, he's now the top choice for that position going into next year, not having it. And the number one big issue or moment that defined Villa 2, Norwich 0 was Bailey bailing. I was extremely excited about the signing of Leon Bailey in the summer. Leverkusen was a dynamic, unpredictable, high-octane, and quite frankly, exhilarating side to watch that was getting into those Champions League places. They were a hipster-like team, and Leon Bailey was a big part of it. But ever since he's arrived at Villa, these 40 minutes against Norwich beautifully encapsulated his time at Villa Park. One moment of brilliance, an excellent left-footed strike that Tim Krul had to clamber across to tip off the crossbar. I mean, that close to a spectacular goal. The rest, however, looked very disjointed. Then he's hurt on what looked like a pretty innocuous type challenge. He had another coming together. Now he's hobbling around, and he forces Steven Gerrard into making a change, which ultimately changed the game. By the way, when he was injured the first time, I don't know if you noticed this if you're watching on television, but did you see the looks on the faces of Bertrand Traore and Carney Chukwuemeka when Steven Gerrard turned around and asked them to warm up? The looks on their faces told me they knew there was no chance they were going to get a sniff in this game. And ultimately, I just do not see either of those two players coming back here next year. We have to be realistic and recognize that Leon Bailey was recruited this summer to a team that is entirely different to what it is now. And I wouldn't be surprised if Villa actually took some inspiration from Bayer Leverkusen, seeing as how they were climbing the ranks steadily, doing things the right way, playing kind of the way I think Dean Smith wanted to play. But now, as difficult as it is for me to admit, because I don't want a player to fail, I don't see him sticking around with Villa, and I don't see him playing in the Premier League. And the danger is he's developing a reputation now as an inconsistent sick note, which could make it very difficult to move him on for anything close to what we paid for him. So on comes Danny Ings. Villa go back to the 4-3-1-2, which I think has been their most effective setup all season. Don't know why they went away from it. And on virtually his first touch, Ings pings a 60-yard ball on a dime, and Ollie Watkins does the rest. It was very similar to the ball Ings played for Leon Bailey for the 3-0 goal against Everton at home. And then Danny Ings does Danny Ings things and mops up in the penalty area, thus dusting the game, which again made me wonder, well, why didn't we just start that way? 4-3-1-2 seems to be our most effective system. Is it possible that they're actually trying to showcase Leon Bailey, or at least get him some confidence and some minutes to maybe entice someone else to take him off our hands this summer, which is now going to be an awful lot more difficult because by the sounds of it, his injury will mean missing a bunch more games in the near future. I happened to catch a very charming Stephen Merchant, Ricky Gervais movie from 2010 this week called Cemetery Junction, which was set in this very era of England, and I loved it. I think you'll enjoy it too. It gave me the early 80s feels. And what a week for the categories we've been following all season long. Huge movement, including the record at Villa Park, which improved slightly to 21 out of a possible 48 points. Watkins and Ings both on the score sheet to make it 15 on the season versus the bottom six, 17 now out of a possible 30 points. And Emi Martinez recording his 11th clean sheet. The results this weekend, the win by Villa and Burnley, kind of takes the anxiety a little bit off the game at Turf Moor because obviously the relegation pressure is squarely on Everton and Leeds now. But I still want this Aston Villa team to close out the season with solid performances, build on the momentum they've built recently and stop Burnley's momentum. Until this weekend, be well. Go barbecue something. Pour yourself an old-fashioned and, as always, up the mighty Villa.